Hello and welcome into the KE Report. Chad and Corey here, your host, and we're talking today with Erik Wetterling, also known as the Hedgeless Horseman. And we'll put a link to the Hedgeless Horseman down below so you can follow along with Erik's work. Erik, always great getting you on the show just to get your thoughts on the resource sector and what news is hitting the wires that has your attention. We were talking off mic about a couple companies here, and first one up to bat is Goliath Resources. They put out some news this morning into their intrusive feeder zone. So a little bit different mineralization than some of the other zones at the Surebet discovery. Headline hole coming out with 12 grams per ton gold equivalent over 10 meters, and a section in there that's almost 20 grams per ton gold equivalent over 6 meters. They also figured out there's some new stacked gold veins in here, some new areas that they intercepted, which had some nice grades as well. What's your key takeaway this morning from the Goliath news release?
Yeah, I mean, I always try to look for, what a news release says about the next 10 or something like that. I mean, we know that most people just look at what the assays were from, past drilling, let's say. And I think that might be, as we discussed off mic, might be the reason why I think it's down today, for example, that, okay, these holes weren't as impressive or even more impressive, let's say, than the headline hole out of the last news release. But I don't care too much about that because no ore body is going to have, you're not going to typically have a big ore body with 10 meters or 30 grams, for example, just all the way through it. So I was hoping to see maybe some additional discoveries like zones, and I'm still waiting for, I don't think they put out the even deeper holes yet where they go below the value floor. So I was looking at that and this reduced intrusion related gold mineralization, which came out with very good results. So what I'm excited about is that they hit even additional zones and some pretty good hits, like 4.85 meters at 7.96 AU grams per ton equivalent, but also what this intrusion hit could suggest is okay, what happens if they start drilling at depth and if they're able to chase this intrusion style gold, basically. And if that's a big mothership, as they put it in the news release, it's this, I think this story could keep surprising us in a sense, because it has changed basically every single year since they started. And it's basically somewhat changing every news release or so. They're still finding new stuff. So that's what gets me intrigued, what this news release, some of the hits, what it suggests about future growth, let's say.
Oh, that's the thing about this company. They've drilled some new areas. They keep hitting holes that are very impressive market-wise. I think over 100-gram meter holes, many much, much higher than that. And again, some in these new areas. So Erik, just taking a step back, looking at Goliath, it's now over a $300 million market cap company driven exclusively by drilling at all these other areas. Where do you see the near-term catalyst to draw this over, let's say, $500 million or even up to that $1 billion market cap level? Does the company need to put out a resource? Do they need to keep focusing on new discoveries, or is it building out on, again, a lot of the discoveries they've already made?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I think they just need to keep going, basically, because when you put out the resource, you're always going to anchor the sentiment in a sense, and some, especially a high growth story. I mean, when the resource is out, it's already stale in a sense, but that's what people are going to look at. It's okay, this is what we're paying for this amount of gold they have, whereas in reality, it's we're already way past the resource already. If I had to choose, I think it's probably best just to kind of keep drilling, and then when they don't have any more obvious targets, let's say, then they might need to put out a resource. Or let's say that for some reason the market totally can't see what they have, let's say, and then they need to explain it. And the easiest ways to explain what you have already is by putting out a news release. And for better or for worse, we talked now, I think, for a few years about the fact that assay labs are relatively slow still. So, I mean, they don't have all the assays out. So before the assays are out, every single assay is out from the last season. I mean, we might be pretty much into the new drill season by then. So I don't know if this is going to continue to be like, I mean, it's going to take some time when they start drilling to actually get those assays out, but they'll probably maybe, report and visuals, etc. So I think this is one of those interesting cases where it's like, even though they have very high seasonality, it might not necessarily be so boring as some northern places can be.
Well, and just in talking with Roger in the past, I've asked him about the resource, and he has no intention of doing that at this point in time because, to your point, they still keep finding other areas. Like, for example, they haven't even put out the results yet from Jackpot, which is about 1.5 kilometers away. That's a different area. They haven't put out the results yet from Treasure Island, which is up in their Cambria ice fields. They put 12 holes up there. Those haven't come out yet. That's a totally different area that wouldn't even be included in a resource. That's a value driver. And in this press release today, with this reduced intrusion, they note again the Blue Origin discovery they made earlier this season, which was just channel samples and ground samples, but it's that reduced intrusion style. They haven't even got to drill that yet, and they're probably going to drill that in this season. So there's still 3 or 4 other areas besides the Surebet discovery zone that wouldn't even be included that are value drivers. They kind of want to see how that shakes out first. So there's still a lot of results to wait for. So it'd be a little premature to cap it at like, hey, just the Surebet, here's the resource. So that's the way the company was thinking about it the last time we checked. Do you like that kind of a style where there's a main area of focus, but then there's 3 or 4 other areas that are all hitting at the same time? Or would you rather see them just simply press their bets at the Surebet area and just blast it out higher as far as the resources they're building around it? Would you rather see them more focused, or do you like the multi-regional attack?
Yeah, I mean, if they're going with the, let's show the potential, I think it's best to simply go and try to show the most potential, because like we know there's a big difference between an infill hole and a discovery hole, because the discovery hole opens up the pipeline for, this might provide 50 new news releases from that. So I would go with that if they're going for like shock value, I was going to say, instead of just drilling very close space if they don't even intend to put out a news release anytime soon. And of course, from a, let's say, market perspective, I think it's much more fun if you're actually finding new stuff. And it's like the thing, what gets people to pay up at the end of the day is typically, the blue sky potential, that it can get even bigger and all that. So I don't mind that. And especially I like, since I see this as kind of a hodl case where it's like, I don't know how big it's going to become. I don't know what it might get sold for at the end of the day. If it gets sold, I just know that as long as they have avenues to actually just grow and grow and grow, in a sense, it's like, I don't need my selling or buying to be that like timely. That's what I prefer in a hodl story, basically, that even if, let's say I for some reason overpaid today, but if they can, grow into those shoes and beyond that, then I'm going to get bailed out anyway. So I really don't mind it, the way they're going about it, just trying to show all the potential. And of course, this is getting quite complicated. I mean, they put in a schematic here trying to explain. Basically, it looks like a kraken or some hydra coming up with veins all over the place. So it is becoming quite complicated. And of course, we're seeing the news releases Goliath puts out. I mean, they're bigger than most juniors. So I don't know. It's hard. Of course, you could crystallize it by putting out a resource, let's say. But if you're aiming for bang for the buck, meaning like new discoveries, new zones and whatever, I think you kind of have to stick to that, at least until you don't see any more obvious bang for the buck potential.
Hey, this stock has been doing very well, and their drilling has been very successful. Still a lot of news to release, so it's nice to still have those catalysts ongoing, and then undoubtedly another big drill program this year. Let's also talk about Hannan Metals. This is a stock that is also doing very well. Traded HAN on the Venture Exchange. The company is focused in Peru, recently had some channel samples that were some pretty good numbers. But look, there's a lot of different projects at play with this company. And again, the market is also taking notice of Hannan Metals. So what do you like? What are your thoughts on this company?
Yeah, like if I go back to my original case for Hannan, it was basically that these guys have an absolute enormous land package. They might have found a brand new porphyry district in Peru. And unlike most porphyry exploration today, which is typically at depth, blind targets and what have you, because most of the near surface or outcropping systems would have been found already. I mean, they're finding every time they go out there, they seem to be finding new targets. And in this news release, the interesting thing was, okay, we got the first trench samples from that huge gold in soil anomaly, and they believe it's an alkaline gold system, think like porphyry, for example. So like the footprint suggests it could be huge, but it's like, where do you start if you have a 4x4 kilometer soil anomaly? It's like the scale of that is almost unfathomable, but here they are. It's like they've done some trenching and already they found, high grade gold bearing structures. So, and that's just the tippy toe of one of the fingers, let's say. So I treat it kind of similar in a sense to some other like stories where the exploration blue sky is immense, and I'm not even going to try to quantify it. And of course, they could come up with, in this case for Hannan, they don't have an ore body yet. So it's like, theoretically, they could come up with no discovery and nothing. But that the blue sky potential is huge given the amount of targets, how big they are, and now it's this huge soil anomaly is getting the risk. So my play is simply like, okay, is it necessarily super cheap at face value with 131 million CAD? It's like, no, but if you look at the potential, you can certainly see why somebody would pay for that. And so if I come back in, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 years, because things take time here in Peru, I don't think they're going to be able to drill this until next year, actually. So in 3 years, they must have been able to do a lot of stuff, I would imagine. And if they make, let's say, a drill discovery here or some porphyry discovery or epithermal plus porphyry or multiple porphyry discoveries, I simply think that the longer time I give a case like this, the higher the potential future share prices, because they are able to go through more targets and do more de-risking, etc. And I know my downside is capped. The most I can lose is 100%. So it's just one of those kind of hodl stories where I don't try to be too cute. I just let these guys do what they're doing, and hopefully this will be one of those, quote, high risk, high reward cases that plays out favorably. And in that case, I have to hold these high risk, high reward cases long enough for the reward side to play out, so that can pay for the other high risk, high reward stories that don't pan out.
Well, and with Hannan Metals, Erik, it's also a story where they have multiple projects already in the fold. So some of that value they've already built is through those other projects. But clearly the focus here in Peru now on this project is what's driving the company. Now, when you have a company that's put out channel samples, it's a little different than just rock chip. Channel samples are a bigger sample size. They're kind of like a horizontal drill hole, if you want to think of it that way, across the surface area. Do you put more weight in something where they're hitting on the channel samples versus rock chip and surveys? Like in this case, they've actually got a bigger chunk of rock that they know is mineralized. Does that make you more bullish? Do you press your bets a little bit more because when the diamond drills show up, it's likely they're going to hit pay dirt? Or is there the risk that there's stuff at surface but not at depth?
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it kind of reminds me in a sense of Goliath Resources, actually. Why did I put in a fair amount of money in that? Because they could actually trace the Surebet zone. It's like they were in the ore body at surface. They could trace it for like a kilometer wrapping around the mountain. It's not like they only had soil samples, because we've seen examples where, it's a huge soil anomaly, but for some reason it's just, I don't know, enriched saprolite or something like this, which I don't believe that to be the case in this case. And also I believe they sampled the side of a riverbed, let's say. So then it's more like arbitrary by nature. It's like, okay, did they necessarily sample where they thought they were going to get the best stuff, or did they sample where they could sample? And it happens to be also in an area where, okay, the soil results are high. So I think I take that as a very, very good sign, because now we kind of know that this is not just an enriched saprolite layer, for example. They're actually hitting high-grade gold in the bedrock. So to me, this is a big thing for the target. And obviously the market kind of appreciated that, because it's up quite a bit since then. So no, I think the fun is pretty much just starting at this big gold system here. And they will be drilling, I believe, porphyry targets this year as well. So I like that kind of diversification to the upside. I don't need to necessarily be correct on any one target, but if they have a few very large targets, etc., Again, we just need one really. With that said, this is quite remote, so it's not like, oh, if they find 1 million ounces of gold, we're going to be happy. It's not like they have a railway nearby and power lines going through this project. So it's like the threshold for success is big, but thankfully they also have a land package and target that goes along with that. But yes, to your point, I think this is much more. I mean, the soil anomaly was impressive enough when we talked about this, but to actually now get confirmation that there are gold-bearing structures in situ, that likely explains this, and they just tested a tiny area and they get these results. Yeah, I think it's big.
Hey, they're good results too. So now the follow-up work happens, but at least the company is at a higher share price. If they need capital, well, it is cheaper and less dilutive for them to raise. Let's also talk about Inflection Resources. This is a prospect generator company with a bunch of projects in Australia. We chat a lot about the Duck Creek project. That has some work on it. Anglo Gold continues to earn in on these projects. And look, they're slowly moving through these projects. The most recent news was a porphyry, a copper gold mineralization that was found. Look, the drill results here, they were okay, I guess. The headline hole being just over 54 meters of 0.37 grams per ton gold, 0.07% copper. Look, they're hitting more smoke. This company has proved very good at hitting smoke in these drill programs. I think a lot of the market's still waiting for a headline discovery hole. But how are you viewing Inflection Resources, even considering the stock did move up almost 50% on the back of these results when initially announced?
Yeah, so this is very much a probabilistic approach from me. I expect them to have not only Duck Creek, but Trangie, which is where they hit a potassic core of a porphyry for the first time. Trangie is going to go into the phase 2 that you can pretty much bank on. I think they're probably going to get 2 to 3 more, so they fill up that 5 phase 2 option. So if I consider that, it's like, okay, they've hit very near smoke in this case, because for the first time they're actually in the potassic core of a porphyry. At Duck Creek, they're still in the inner propylitic zone and have yet to find up the potassic zone. So it's like, hey, the potential of making a, let's say, near-term discovery has kept increasing. It went up with the Duck Creek news, and they drilled huge step outs around that. Didn't really get closer, so now they believe it's at depth, and that's where I guess they will be drilling. And the Trangie here is like they're in the potassic core. So like, if there is an economic ore body here, economic inner potassic core, that might be 50 meters away, 80 meters, 100 meters. There might also not be one, but this is the closest we've ever been to the potential of actually making a discovery hole. And they put in the news release where you can trace how the Ridgeway discovery happened, where it's like, okay, they hit smoke, and then it's like move the drill rig, and then a world-class intercept. That's the potential. That is very live. There is certainly a chance that within the next few holes from Trangie, they could come out with the first ever like true discovery type assays. So I simply think that from a longer term perspective, especially if I reckon there will be like 4 to 5 phase 2 projects, they're potentially near a discovery, 2 of them. If I just divide the market cap by like 4 or 5, it's just a ridiculous low chance of success priced in, because they are chasing only, and you can look at the technical team, they have probably the most impressive technical team I've seen in a junior. They're only after potential world-class discovery. So they're not looking for any type of porphyry or small deposit or anything like that. They only care about world-class discovery. So I simply think that, and I don't know what the chance of success is. I mean, they might end up drilling 20 targets and end up with 0 success, no discovery, and even this market cap will look cheap. But I just think that from a longer-term perspective, I think it's pricing in way too low a chance of success, especially after they just put out a hole like this, because this could, again, literally, the very next hole could be a discovery hole at Trangie, and I don't think it's pricing in any chance or most of that happening.
All right, well, we'll keep following along with the results from Inflection Resources. like you say, they've got lots of shots on the board to make one of these targets the primary focus of the company. Right now, they're still, as Corey mentioned, hitting a lot of smoke at several of these targets. But like you say, they could be one hole away from dialing into a porphyry center, and then it's liftoff time. So definitely an interesting story. Nice that they're funded through the partner of a major, helping with the drill costs. So we'll keep following along with all three companies. I appreciate getting your insights on Goliath, Hannan, and Inflection today. If people like getting Erik's thoughts, definitely click on the link below this interview. Takes you over to the Hedgeless Horseman website, where you can follow along with his written work as well as some of the videos where he does deep dives in these companies. And Erik, as always, looking forward to our next conversation.
Thanks, guys, and consider me biased. I own shares of all these companies, and I believe all of them are banner sponsors as well, so twice biased.